Many Talk Radio listeners may be familiar with Nick Buckley. He's appeared on the station many times, and he's now with us in the studio. How are you, Nick?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I think we first spoke, when did all that charity stuff happen? When was that?
That was June last year.
June last year. Yeah. So we spoke at that time.
On
and
Zoom,
I remember there was a hell of a hullabaloo following that interview, of course, because, other parties wanted to get involved. And is that all sorted now? Is that all settled?
I'm settled, as in the charity settled, and all of that's done. There is some pending legal action, and hopefully I can talk to you about that next month, and that'll be some very pleasant, interesting news there.
All right, so we won't pursue it too much now, but other than to say that you kind of had dedicated a large chunk of your life
2 decades
to the kids, to charity, kids with really challenging backgrounds and the like, but it was your views on other matters,
on Black Lives Matter,
that appeared to upset the apple cart. So all the good work that you'd done, it's like, well, sod that doesn't matter anymore because you've got the wrong view on something.
Yes. And I needed to be punished, and I needed to be destroyed.
You're a very bad man, Nick Buckley. You know this.
I was
You're
that
an absolute outrage. Get this man out of our studio now. But that's where we're at, isn't it? I mean, we talk, as you know, we talk about this kind of stuff, where you think we're in a kind of an Alice in Wonderland upside down world, where left means right, and it's this curious, strange maze we've all found ourselves in. There's landmines all over the place.
But the best thing about this, what happened to me last year, was it was a 5-week period from beginning to end, and what I showed and what I keep telling people was they were so easy to beat. The only reason they're successful, only the woke and the cancel culture mob are successful, is because people get cancelled and don't fight back. I decided to fight back, and in 5 weeks I beat them all. And it was fairly easy to do. Don't get me wrong, it was stressful at the time.
Yes.
And I didn't know I was going to win. But I look back now and go, they were easier than I possibly imagined to be.
It's interesting because you don't meet anyone in the real world that agrees with those views, really. It's this tiny group of people, this sort of subset of the human gene pool that have constructed all of these strange standards and beliefs.
They have the biggest voices, that's all it is. They have the biggest voices.
The loudest voices are the ones that win over. It's like, what's his name? Free speech campaigner, former cop.
Harry Miller.
Harry Miller, yeah.
Yes,
you know
I
Harry.
Harry,
You know Harry. Similarly, Harry fought. And when you fight, people go, oh, right, okay. You've got a good point. Because there is no argument that you can advance.
And the bullies. And we learn in primary school, bullies leave you alone when you stand up to them, and that's all they are. Yeah,
and it's an interesting irony, isn't it, that there's one of their starting points is that you are kind of victimizing people, and then their way of dealing with that is to victimize you in the most spectacular way. And you think, wow, how have we got here? Who is this? I mean, it might go away in a couple of years. I was reading, I can't remember who it was I was reading, that said they think it'll be this kind of, we're in a bit of an era of this, and it might sort of disappear in social media.
I think it will.
So yeah, social media as kind of, Andrew Doyle, as you know, writes a lot about this kind of stuff, and we speak to Andrew, and I'll bang on about this kind of area all day long, because it's insanity. It's genuinely a sort of a measure of absolute madness that we have these characters around. And the minute you mention anything, particularly with race, particularly with sexuality or gender, those kind of issues, I think what tends to happen is some companies and organizations think, oh well, we might be in trouble here, so we better roll over on this one, because otherwise we're going to be accused of an ism. And it's like, no one's going to accuse you of that, because this is nuts to start with.
It's people who are doing the wrong thing, knowing it's the wrong thing, but still doing it because they're afraid of a potential backlash. And we call that cowardice.
Well, that's what's happened with Marks and Spencers, isn't it?
Absolutely.
With their badges. It's like literally no one has there's no like gender psychologist or clinician that has gone to Marks and Spencers and said, look, love your Colin the Caterpillar, your Percy Pigs are to die for, but your pronouns are frankly rubbish, so sort this out. And that didn't happen. No one's asked for this.
If I was a shareholder in Marks and Spencers, I'd be saying to the big bosses, the food sales do well, congratulations. Everything else you sell is failing. Why don't you start looking at better products, higher quality products, better customer services, better prices, And why are you touching pronouns? Because pronouns isn't going to increase your sales. And as a shareholder, I'm not going to make any more money on this. So do your job. And if you don't do your job, we're going to sack the top layer of staff at Marks and Spencer's.
And I don't even think any, from what I can gather, stand to be corrected, I don't think any staff asked for this either.
No.
So you've got these, you know, £100,000 a year diversity managers. And what I thought was interesting about that, it was managers plural. There's more than one of them as well that have given this heady task. You know, it's like, well, you know, if I was struggling with clothes sales like M&S have been struggling, I wouldn't be employing this extra raft of management that nobody really needs. But let's bring them on, and they've come up with this initiative.
They're behind the curve. This would have worked and this would have been seen as progressive and wonderful 18 months ago.
Yeah.
But the public have moved on now, and this is seen now as tokenism and just being pathetic, and the people won't have it. And I think their sales are going to reflect that.
Yeah.
Well, Marks and Spencer's came up with the George Floyd lingerie line 6-8 months ago. Inspired by the death of George Floyd. And we've got more skin tones now, different shades of browns.
Because somebody complained that the word tobacco, do you remember, a bra was described as tobacco colour.
Tobacco brown, yeah, and they said that was offensive. So
that was offensive. Yeah. And then, of course, what happens, instead of, when somebody complains and says it's offensive, Marks and Spencer's should reply to that person and go, thank you for your letter, get in the bin, you're an idiot. But they don't. They go, oh, we're really sorry.
Yeah.
We will learn from our mistakes. And now the non-binary, and what's the other term? Non-binary and gender neutral groups of people who are not even complaining about this. I don't know, you know, who that particular group are, but that is what they're bringing this in for. Because if you're a trans man or a trans woman, you'd be happy to be a he or a her. So it's not that group. Yeah. But if we're in any doubt, next time you go into M&S and you see Barbara, and she's got it on her name badge, it may well say Barbara, they, them, there.
And also Z and Z. And there's hundreds of these pronouns you can pick from.
Someone's taking the P here, aren't they? Z and Z, that's right. I mean, these are, just refer to me as Z.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. No, I won't refer to you as Z. I'm not going to dilute the entirety of the English language to appease your political opinions, which I feel is what is going on here.
Yep. And these people are called narcissists. These people are basically saying, look at me, I'm special, look at me. And we should stop looking at them.
That's right. Yes. Don't look at people that say, look at me. Yeah. That's the key to it. Tell us about Go Woke, Go Broke.
Yeah, so that's a project I set up a few months ago.
Yep.
The website's should be online in a couple of weeks' time. So I wrote a book last year. That's been released this month.
Okay.
And one of the tips I gave in there for people to fight back against the woke lunacy was an idea of Go Woke, Go Broke, which means let's start highlighting to the public all these woke companies who want our money. And if we don't agree with what they're saying and what they're spouting, then let's shop somewhere else and teach them a lesson by affecting their bottom line. So not cancelling these companies, because I don't want to cancel companies, but let's show them we're not happy with this. They will then change their ways, and then we can start shopping at those companies again. Because all they want is our money. And if they want our money, then I want them to stop banging on about our immigration policies, the environment, woke this and woke that. I'm sick of it, and I'm not going to spend money in those businesses.
Yeah, I want M&S to flog me a Colin the Caterpillar cake. I don't really I don't want to hear their opinions on anything else apart from that, really.
It's like we've got Ben and Jerry's who are lecturing the British government on their immigration policy.
Oh, that's right, Ben.
An ice cream company who have been fined millions of pounds for having toxins in their ice cream. And we're taking advice off them about our immigration. We need to say to them, shut up, we're not interested. You're owned by Unilever, who have also been fined for environmental damage and illegal practices. And why are we listening to these people? We must be idiots.
It is extraordinary. It's the kind of strange world we're living in, isn't it? By the way, it's not just M&S, the Ministry of Defence as well. Now,
we're getting scary now. So up to now, we can laugh at these people, laugh at these companies. They're privately owned companies. If they go bankrupt, well, they go bankrupt. Now we're looking at the British Army, who are making all staff and all soldiers and generals now having to proclaim their pronouns in meetings. This is now a clear and present danger for the security of the nation. Believe me, the Russians and the Chinese are not looking at the British Army and quaking in their boots.
Can you imagine? I'm Major General Forsyth Bottomley, and I identify as him, and her, whatever it happens to be. Really? You're going to stick that on one of your medals? Is that how it's going to work?
Absolutely. I mean, it used to be crazy and silly. It's now becoming dangerous.
Yeah.
Because China's a threat to us in the next decade or two. There will be probably a war with China at some point, and we're doing this to our army.
Again, you have to wonder and scratch your head and think, who was the... At some point, did an individual walk into work? I always imagine, Nick, this person was, got out the shower in the morning. Let's take it back to where they live. And they were on the train going into work, and they thought, I've got this cracking idea. Let's get all the top brass at the Ministry of Defence to declare their pronouns in every meeting. I mean, how did that really, is that how it happened?
I know exactly how it happens. I spent a decade working with the police. I used to be based in police stations. I wasn't a police officer, but I was based in police stations. And the police are based on the army. And how it works in the police, when you go for promotion, there's certain things they want you to talk about: diversity, inclusion, LBGT issues. And if you can come up with ideas and projects in your interview, that's how you get promoted.
Right. Okay.
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They start promoting the wokest of the woke.
Yep.
So other people then realise, I've got to be woke if I want to be promoted.
Yeah.
And it feeds off itself, hence how we get to where we are now.
They're called progressives, aren't they?
Yeah.
Progressive. That's one word. There's many others as well, which we can't broadcast. Nick, stay with us. We are absolutely delighted that Nick Buckley is with us here on Talk Radio. Political commentator, charity worker, former political candidate, and founder of Go Woke, Go Broke. More from Nick coming up after this. Former political candidate, Nick.
Yep.
So where did that happen, and is it going to happen again?
So I've stood twice. So in 2018, I stood as an independent councillor for Manchester City Centre, and I stood on rough sleeping because we've got a huge issue in Manchester City Centre, and that's all I wanted to talk about was rough sleeping.
Yeah. Which was the charity that you were involved
we work
with
rough sleeping as well. Yeah, exactly. And I could see what we needed to do, but the council wasn't doing it. And if you don't get them to do what you want, then you need to stand up and be heard. And that's why I stood. Didn't win. And then earlier this year, I stood against Andy Burnham for Mayor of Greater Manchester for the Reform Party. And I stood there because a couple of months before, Greater Manchester Police had been put into special measures for failing. Only police force in special measures in the whole country. Wow. Because they missed 120,000 crimes, went straight from phone calls into the bin without ever being looked at. And I thought, no, I'm not having that. So someone had to raise this at an election. I knew I wouldn't win, but again, it's not about winning. It's about telling people what's going on.
Yeah, I was going to say you're up against the establishment, but when you stand in an election like that, you get some airtime out of it.
Absolutely.
You're able to advance those points. And of course, you get to be there on the night when, when it's seen whether, who's been successful, who hasn't, etc. So there's a good experience in doing that. Are you going to do it again somewhere?
I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it because I knew I wasn't going to win. Yeah. It was a very enjoyable experience.
Did Burnham shake your hand afterwards?
Yes.
Say congratulations?
I mean, he's a nice man. I disagree with some of his politics,
right,
but he's a nice man. Not that this is personal, but I just wanted to give the people of Manchester some information so they can make an informed choice, and they made their choice, so therefore I stand by it. I'm 99% sure I'll stand at the next general election as an MP. Yeah.
Would that be for Reform?
That'll be for
again?
Reform Party again. Yeah.
It's interesting when we've done a couple of debates because the Prime Minister is so in the doghouse at the moment for Lord knows how many reasons, and we fill a switchboard. We did it yesterday, just dozens and dozens and dozens of calls, all from people who are natural conservatives or they're red wall conservatives. So they said, I'll give these guys a try, and all really disappointed. And I invariably say to callers, okay, so the Tories are out. Who are you going to vote for? Yeah. And the Reform Party comes up time and time again now.
I'm glad to hear that. If you're a Conservative government with an 80-seat majority, anything you're not doing is because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So all these problems we've got We're not fixing them because nobody wants to fix them.
Sure.
And that's the big problem we've got in our politics, is too many politicians and not enough statespeople who have a vision for the country and say, this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, don't vote for me.
Sure.
We have too many politicians who are just worried about the next election.
Let's look at another crime here, Nick. Knife crime.
Yeah.
Police urging young people to get rid of their knives amid fears that London in particular could see a record number of teenage killings this year. This one has been, I mean, we've debated it constantly for many years.
Yep.
And every Home Secretary says, and I can remember, I think even Jack Straw saying, oh, well, we're going to get tough on this. And if you're caught with a knife, straight away, you're either going to go to jail for carrying it, or the idea that we came up with, if you don't send them to jail, you put a tag around their ankle that stays there for 2 years, and they're on a curfew as well. So why they don't do that, which seems a rather simple way of at least beginning to address it. But here we are at the moment, the number of teenage homicides in the capital reaching 26 in 2021, just 3 less than a record of 29 back in 2008.
Absolutely disgraceful. 2 points. The first point is, when we have the police telling criminals not to be criminals, we know we've hit rock bottom. We know the police have no idea and no more idea about how to tackle this problem. When we're telling people don't carry a knife, that's just ridiculous. I've spent 2 decades tackling knife crime in Greater Manchester. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I know more than most people. I've taken knives off young kids on the street corners. I've physically taken them off them, so I do know something about this. We've had issues like this before. We had dueling 100 years ago where men would kill each other, and they killed each other over respect. That's what's happening now. People think knife crime is about turf wars over drug patches. It's not. It's over respect. It's over status. You say something bad about me on social media, I'm going to stab you to death because my friends are laughing at me now about that. We really tackle this issue by taking the bull by the horns. And what we need to do is we need to put the power back in the hands of local people, because I'm always a big believer of giving people the power. We need to speak to every local council ward, and we say to people in those areas, do you want the police to tackle knife crime in this ward? Do you want more stop and search? Do you want a harder police presence to stop your young children killing each other? And if you vote yes, that's what you're going to get. That then stops the police being accused of being racist, of picking on young black men, because the police turn around and say, no, excuse me, this area voted for this type of policing. And if you don't vote for it, you don't have to have it. But then when you've got your young people dying on the streets and you've got the community groups screaming at the police, you're not stopping this, we can say to them, you never gave us the powers to stop this.
Good point.
We've got to give the power back to the people and take the politics out of it. Because if this was women dying on the streets, this wouldn't last. There'd be a national outcry. But because it's young men are disposable. We don't have the same sympathy for men dying in pools of their own blood.
Isn't it? You're absolutely right. And you've only got to look at the reaction we've had around women's safety, the correct reaction. About a focus on, keeping women safe and the responsibility that everybody has in that argument. That doesn't really. We don't have the same arguments about that. I'm listening to MPs, London female MPs, who are advancing the arguments, again, correctly about women's safety, who are completely silent on the issue of knife crime with young kids dying on the streets. You hear nothing at all.
Because they're male.
Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely.
They don't want to get involved with that.
2 reasons. Because they're male, and in London, because they're predominantly black. And who wants to tackle an issue that's predominantly black? Because what you're going to be called... You're going to be called a racist and a Nazi. So do you know what? It's easier for me to do nothing than me put my head above the parapet and try to save lives. I might as well say nothing, keep my nice job and keep my pension, because these lives that are dying are not worth my pension, and that's disgraceful.
That's interesting. Listen, on that point, Nick, we are out of time. But it's been great to have you in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where are we going to see you next? What are you up to? I said that like you're about to perform at Wembley, didn't I?
I've got a book coming out end of the month that's all about how to fight back against this woke culture and how not to be a coward. That's what we need to teach people. Don't be a coward. And then follow me on social media, Nick Buckley MBE. I'm on all the all the apps.
Fantastic. Nick, great to see you, and we will speak very soon.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Nick Buckley with us here on Talk Radio.